You didn't forget that I was looking for a sponsorship now, did you? Well, the first person to send some money was Shop Teacher D, which is another YouTube channel that talks about beef jerky and automotive stuff. So you need both of those in your life. Go and subscribe to him. The other one is a local place, Tony's Mexican Grill, finer side of Mexican dining. Tell Ricky that the purple Miata sent you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Judgment Day. We are finally going to put in the Supercharger. Oh god, my thumbs didn't only went out that far in front of me. There we go, much better. So, I'm going to have this top-down view of the first part of the Supercharger installation process, which is the removal of everything else that's going on inside of here. So just follow along. I'll narrate some things for big steps, but otherwise we're going to start with removing a couple pieces, being the snorkel, which is over here, just off screen. It's attached to our intake. We'll be taking that off. This cross pipe, let me just adjust it. This cross pipe will come off, and then this part of the cross pipe as well, and the throttle body over here to follow. To the person who used anti-seize on these bolts, thank you so much. is so much space in here with all that junk removed. Next up, we're going to start adding pieces back in. So take everything out. Video is showing about 24 minutes, not too bad. Just be careful of all the extra fluid that may pop out on you. Otherwise, I think that's the easy part, unfortunately. The hard part is usually putting stuff back in. So first step after the assembly is you need to start swapping out parts from your actual intake, your throttle body, over to what we call your dummy throttle body. What's coming off is this bottom plate over here. It's going to be swapped out with this part over here. This one's held in by 3 screws, boom, boom, and then there's one more down here. Sorry, that hurts my wrist. And so we're going to do the whole swap-a-rama here. Shouldn't be too hard, hopefully. Alright, we are swapped, boom, boom. So, the dummy one, if you notice, doesn't actually have the butterfly valve in it like that. This one does. This is going to end up going over on this side closer to the supercharger, and this is just going to allow air to flow right through it back into our intake manifold. So I'm going to put this on very loosely because we will need a new gasket for it, but otherwise this right here, done. And then this is going to be used later in that section. So again, we're just going finger tight right now because it's not a good seal. I have to scrape that off later, but I want to get it assembled and see if we're missing anything critical. Check. Next page. All right. We don't have power steering or AC. Oh, but we do a beep, 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 beep. All right, none of that. Useless. Just extra weight and more things that could break. Something else that could break that we don't have. I think I went too far. Nope, didn't go too far. Keep on going. It's nice to make some progress. All right, fuel management. So if you take a look right here, this is the crossover pipe, so I guess we could start with that. This will go on. I just haven't figured out where I want to mount it yet. So we're skipping this step temporarily. We're going to go with that step. Here is our crossover pipe. So this is what is now going to act as that plastic was that I removed before. So it's going to go to our dummy from the actual supercharger, which will be located on the right hand side. It's nice, so we don't have to worry about it collapsing under a vacuum. And I'm just going to hook it up right now and kind of see where this thing fits. Nope, just me being an idiot. This doesn't come till much later. Goodbye. Alright. Next up. Alright. This still fuel. There's the Supercharger Preparation, so I already have that done. If you take a look down here in the bottom section, that is showing you kind of how things are set up. So, Supercharger Preparation, Supercharger Installation. So first up is the flange that we needed to get welded. That's going to go on the side. Boom, that new well-on piece right there. It's going to go on the side over here. Well, we've hit a wall because I only got one good bolt and one just holding it in right now as a placeholder, which means I'm going to go find out what length these should actually be to go in here, because if these aren't right and this holds a supercharger, well, the supercharger is going to flop around and could become like a 50-pound projectile, and I don't want that. Plus it cost me more than I want to admit to get this, so yeah, gonna have to go find the real bolts. I'll tell you, there are few feelings that beat the feeling of finding a bolt in your extra stash that mates perfectly with the hole and thread count that it needs to go into and is the right size. So we saved ourselves a trip to the Home Depot, and we'll put those bolts in and we'll get our bracket put on. Well, look at that. That is mounted in there nice and tight. So what's coming up next is an extra mounting point, which is going to go on down here. If the car did have power steering, that's where it would be. But instead, we are going to replace it with this Track Dog Racing pulley. So this will mount there. It's going to be turned sideways as such, and that's going to run the belt across our crank pulley down there, through here, and over the supercharger pulley. Another wonderful rookie mistake. There's the third mounting bolt that goes in down here. Unfortunately, this bolt blocks it off. So make sure you keep this thing, the bolt, retracted as far as possible when you're doing that. So pull it back so you have access to that. And then this actual part right here, loosen up the bolt that is right here. Oh, there you go. Right here. That's going to allow this part to pivot down so you have access to get that third bolt in. The more you know, kids, the more you know. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. This thing, I could do pull-ups now if I wanted to, but it's locked in there. It's ready to go. We have our support arm right here that will hook up to our supercharger later on. The bolts, after a little bit of a struggle, are all in there. So we have a solid point for our belt. Next up, Supercharger. Don't tell my special lady friend, but that is one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen. So it's in there. We've got 2 bolts right there that you have to snag and put those on the bracket. And on the back side, there is 1 bolt that was kind of awkward, so I was curling it in there. And I had a little bit of play with this, so I loosened that one up, and I also loosened up our old throttle body to give me a little bit more clearance to work with, so I'll have to tighten that stuff down. But otherwise, check dust! Past that. So we are 1 step closer to having this thing supercharged. There is 1 bracket underneath the supercharger, so it's this arm right here. It's going to come up, mount in there, and the back side, there's a... Sorry about that. Your ears. My apologies. Right here, this backside bracket. That's actually where the throttle body wire is going to connect now. It's our throttle wire, which allows us to go very fast. Vroom, vroom. All right. So next up, we're going to try and get the actual belt looped on here. So it loops around the supercharger pulley, this idler pulley. Then there is 1 more pulley down here, and the actual pulley that's going to drive this thing, which is connected to the crankshaft. So the crank pulley, idler pulley, this is an adjustable one. We can move it back and forth, so that'll help us tension it, and then it'll loop over this. That actually wasn't too bad. So it snakes around, like we said, down there, and then it disappears into the darkness. But the Track Dog Racing pulley has this nice auto tensioner over here, which lets us just crank on it to make everything nice and tight. Take a look. The ribs are very well centered there. They're underneath this bracket without issue. And then down here in the abyss, right in the grooves, exactly where we want it. So, 1 step closer. Let's get some more hardware on here. Okay, so while trying to put in the intake, you need to bend down that white tab right there, which I'm going to see if I can not do, but they recommend it. And then this bracket, which normally holds one end of the stock airbox in, there's a bolt located right there. You can take that out and this whole piece will come out with it to give you some more space. Next up, we're going to move the throttle cable, which is this, and it connects, well, its connector is down here. We're going to undo all the brackets, and we're going to reroute it so that it can be secured underneath the supercharger using this bracket. No lies, this thing was actually the most difficult part of the install so far, so please make sure you follow these directions. Here's a picture for reference if you need, because that was actually kind of a pain. Otherwise, we are going to install the spaceship next. So it's not a spaceship, although that would be pretty sweet. This is actually a adjustable fuel pressure regulator. It'll help us keep the correct amount of fuel going in with the new amount of air that we're shoving into the cylinders. First thing that you're going to need to do is pick out a location for your spaceship to land. I am picking the firewall on the passenger side. It's pretty flat, easy to use. Should be easy to drill as well. That is the hose that we're going to connect in and out of the ports where the fuel's going, so it shouldn't be too bad. I marked up the new locations for the drill, and I'm using some older drill bits, so please don't insult my drilling ability. It is terrible, I'm well aware. I should be using a center punch. I'm lazy, I'm not, and here is a classic example as to why you should definitely use the best drill bits available to you, as well as a center punch if you have one available as well. So enjoy my misery, laugh at my embarrassment, but I did eventually manage to drill through both of these locations. This seems to be the common place to mount these. The other place is on the passenger side shock tower. I just didn't feel comfortable drilling through the shock tower because I don't want bolts anywhere near the wheels or in the wheel well. This is pretty secure, it's up top, it's out of the way, but again, to each their own. See? Successful. You gotta be persistent. That was a commitment cut right there. So for the UFO, aka the adjustable fuel pressure regulator, you do need to make sure that you know which side is the inside and which side is the outside. So by that I mean which one has the fuel going into the port and which one has the fuel exiting the port. It should be marked somewhere for you. So right there, let's see if we can get to adjust it on there. That's the inside, so that's me coming off of the actual stock fuel pressure regulator. So you want that side closer to the actual engine. So pretty much at this point, all the hardware is in. Now it's time for some software upgrades. So we have a Sebring Mazda Miata boost controller, and that's going to help us with the electronic timing for the firing of our spark plugs. So that is going to get wired in back here to our crank angle sensor back there. So if you take a look right here, someone at some point chopped this up. So I'm going to have to undo that work, but it shouldn't be too bad because it's just about 4 or 5 wires that we're going to need to solder in here. Hello, little doggy. How are you doing today? I think he meant okay. Anyways, we are done splicing and cutting in the wires. soldering isn't too hard, but just getting access back here is a pain. Also trying to make sure that the hot soldering iron does not actually melt through any of other wires, like the one containing a bunch of gasoline. That is also of concern, but they're in there, they are secure. We have a new electronic brain to help us out on this. One step closer to firing it up. Crossover pipe is now installed. I can show you how to do that if you need to. It's not too bad, but definitely start by securing the supercharger end first and then working in the throttle body one. So we are real close to starting right now, but we got one more thing to get, and unfortunately we all know how the stores are currently due to the world. So I need Teflon tape to secure these inside so we don't have any sort of fuel leakage in the engine bay, because extra fuel, heat, fire, bad times. So until next time, this is where we're at. Hope all is well. Subscribe and like the channel, please.